Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. Customer from our first story got what she deserved. But before we begin, best way to support our channel is to leave comments, like, and subscribe with the turned-on bell so you don't miss the new video every single day.
Okay, so I work here, right? It was several Christmases ago, and my wife was at Target trying to buy a video game for my son. The electronics counter was swamped with customers, and there was only this one poor teenager working the desk who was fairly clueless. So she was patiently waiting her turn to get the game she wanted released from the locked display cabinet. Some random lady turned to her and complained, "Hey, we were here before those people," pointing to the folks that were currently being assisted. My wife shrugged in reply. Someone else said to her, "They really should have a numbered ticketing system here." My wife agreed with the idea. Finally, someone wondered out loud why she wasn't on the other side of the counter helping with customers. Then she realized she was wearing beige slacks and a red shirt, and everyone there assumed she was an employee. Being a longtime teacher at a nonprofit educational preschool, her instincts clicked into place immediately. "Okay, everybody, form a single file line down this aisle." She quickly organized the shopping queue as everyone there obeyed her commands like she was some sort of retail drill sergeant. She put herself at the front of the line and, like magic, became the next customer to be waited on. By the time anyone figured out what had happened, she'd had the game bought, paid for, and was out the door. And our next story. Have fun finding 6 new receptionists. Our office had a rotation of 8 receptionists, 2 of which were full-time and the rest of us worked part-time shifts. We had varied hours, but we were open 7 days a week, ranging from the standard 9 to 5 to 9 to 9 certain days of the week. Depending on the day, we had up to 2 people up at reception. It was a medical office. We did x-rays, CT scans, MRIs, etc. So if we were given any type of paperwork, it needed to be scanned into our system the same day for insurance purposes. Now, my slacking coworker, let's call her Marilyn, all but refused to scan anything in and waited for whoever was relieving her to pass off her paperwork to them. This was dangerous, honestly. There were certain patients that could have been diagnosed with brain tumors, and her not doing her job would delay their diagnosis. 5 of my coworkers and I spoke to her privately about the matter, stating that we would go to our boss if Marilyn didn't change. She said she'd start scanning everything in from then on. That lasted about 2 weeks before she slacked off and stopped doing her job again. Eventually, 3 of the 5 of us went to our boss about it. We all explained the situation to her, that our workloads were doubling because of Marilyn's refusal to work, and we felt it was unfair. That we felt incredibly stressed as a result. Our boss assured us it would be handled and told us not to worry. Another thing to note about this office, it was basically like being in high school again. It was mostly women working, most of whom were in their 30s and 40s, but acted like teenagers. There was a lot of gossiping and a lot of passive-aggressive behavior. Like if someone wanted to order lunch, they would purposely not tell one person or a group of people because they were mad at them that day. It was just weird and childish, and I was lucky not to get caught in the crossfire until the day I told my boss. You see, we left the door open as we were explaining the situation. Unfortunately, that meant that the billing department, which consisted of 3 people who were all busybodies, could hear everything as they were right next door. One of them was quick to call up Marilyn and let her know what we'd done. Marilyn was called into the boss's office later that day, and when she returned, she was livid. She immediately went into the administrative staff and told them all what happened, claiming that the part-timers had some sort of personal vendetta against her for no reason and how she was a victim in all this. She then made it her personal mission to try and make our work lives miserable, which included encouraging the rest of the staff to not speak with us. This didn't work for the most part, but there was definitely a lot of coldness from a few people on the administrative staff, taking 30-minute bathroom breaks when she worked with one of us, just disappearing altogether if a rush of people walked in. She refused to physically speak to us. Instead, she would send an email for a request. "Can you please stop swallowing your water so loudly?" while we were sitting right next to each other, making sure we never got invited to lunch orders, happy hours, dinner parties, etc. Taking any mementos we'd posted on the walls and replacing them with pictures of her children. Constantly printing out and doing things for her personal life. But if she caught one of us doing the same, she would immediately tell the administrative staff. If anything, this brought us all closer together. We wouldn't have gone to the work happy hour anyway, since we were all hanging out together elsewhere. We all had our frustrating Marilyn stories, But we all also worked part-time and in varying degrees of finishing schooling, so it didn't really matter what she pulled. We were all careful to document what we could as well. Any particularly nasty emails were forwarded to our personal accounts. We had a running log of breaks she took, etc. However, she somehow convinced the administration staff to shorten all of our hours. I went from about 20 hours a week to 10. The two other people who'd gone to the boss were in similar boats, while the ones who'd been frustrated with Marilyn but unable to make the meeting suddenly had their workloads doubled. We were all angry at this point because no one wanted the hours they were receiving. When we asked the staff why the hours had changed so drastically, they said it had been approved by our boss after a few weeks of monitoring our work performance. Basically, we were fed bullcrap. On top of that, the yearly raise I was supposed to receive had not been implemented due to my poor work performance, which was again bullcrap. Once again, we went to our boss, this time all 5 of us. Instead of listening to us, looking at all of our evidence we had against Marilyn, letting us explain how toxic of a work environment it had become, she completely blew us off and told us that either we do our work or we find somewhere else to be employed. Later on that week, I overheard her talking to a girl in the billing department about how Marilyn was going to come over to the boss's house that weekend and cut her hair free of charge. The 180-degree turn in my boss's attitude suddenly made sense. Following the meeting with my boss, my coworkers and I had a little gathering. I'd been planning on quitting the job soon anyway, as I was starting graduate school. Of my 4 other coworkers, 2 were going back to nursing school, 1 had found a full-time job elsewhere, and the other one was just sick of all this crap. So we played it cool for about a week. Then, one by one, handed in our letters of resignation, all saying that we were quitting on the same date, and another receptionist decided she was going back to school for her MBA, so she quit as well. From 8 receptionists, the office was now down to 2. Only 2 receptionists had the ability to work past 5 p.m. They both quit. No more late-night appointments. I was the receptionist that worked on Sundays. Can't be open 7 days a week now. Our boss practically begged 3 of us to change our mind, or at least change the date of resignation so she could have more time to find replacements. No dice. By my estimate, by the time they manage to find and train all the people they need, they will have lost $50,000 between not working certain hours and days. Instead of having a party the day of the resignation as is expected, the entire administration was too busy trying to find 6 receptionists to train and employ. We didn't mind, though. We had our own celebration at a restaurant and made sure to invite the staff members we actually liked. This all happened about 6 months ago. Last I heard, the administration quickly realized how lazy Marilyn was and decreased her pay and hours as a result. The newer receptionists can barely last a month before quitting due to how bad the work environment is, and they still haven't found anyone to work weekends or late nights. And remember how I mentioned that Marilyn would frequently do her personal work at her desk? Well, it turns out she was filling out forms to get her children free lunches at school one day while I was working with her. Also, turns out that she lied on the forms, stating her husband was the only one in the family that worked to ensure they were under the amount of money needed to be eligible for the program. It just so happens that the vice principal of the school received a call from someone to let them know that Marilyn was lying about being unemployed and had no qualms giving out Marilyn's work address and hours. I know for a fact her kids were kicked off this list, given that the vice principal called me back to confirm it. And our next story. Karen thinks my sons are yard workers. We're a mostly Hispanic family that lives in a modest middle-class neighborhood. Our teenage sons maintain our lawn and also our neighbor's lawn. She's a single mom and an ER nurse and appreciates the help. The cast is Karen, my older son who's 19, my younger son who's 17, me and my husband, plus some bonus characters at the end. My sons had noticed a few times that there was a woman in a silver Lexus that rolled past our house a few times when they'd been out there. She basically just pulled up in front of the house and idled in the middle of the street staring. Finally, one evening, she worked up the nerve to roll down the window to speak with them. Karen says, "Hello, I saw you boys doing the yards and wondered if you could do mine too." "Possibly. Where do you live?" "I live 3 miles away in a much more expensive neighborhood." "Oh no, I'm sorry, ma'am. We don't have a truck and the lawn equipment won't fit in my car." "Okay, thanks. No problem. Bye." So a couple weeks later, Karen rolls up again. "Hello, I saw you boys doing the yards and wondered if you could do mine too." "I'm sorry, ma'am, but like we told you last time, we don't have any way to transport our lawn equipment." Also, this really isn't a business. We just do it in our spare time to help out. Well, how do you get it all here? We live here, and we do our neighbor's yard as a favor. You live here? Let me speak to your master. Do you mean our parents? No, your master, owner, boss, whatever. My younger son then comes in to get me and relays what's happening. I'm still kind of disbelieving and think he surely misunderstood. My older son just ignored her while she waited and resumed his yard work. I walk out and say, "Hello, ma'am. How can I help you?" "I need to talk to their owner." She points at my sons. "I'm their mother. What's the issue?" "Who is their owner? I want to speak with them." "They don't work here, lady. This isn't a business. These are my sons." Karen still doesn't seem to understand that I am the mistress of the house, also referred to in 2020 as the homeowner. At this point, my husband, who is Caucasian, comes out of the house to see what's happening. Karen then says to my husband, "Sir, hi, I was wondering if you would allow your workers to come do my yard." My husband, who's not been apprised of what the hell is actually happening but realizes something is definitely not right, says, "Hi, ma'am, these are my sons. They live here. Is something wrong?" Karen then seems to finally realize what's happening and mumbles something of an apology to my husband only, then gets back in her car and leaves. But wait, there's more. About an hour later, 2 police officers, 2 separate squad SUVs show up at our door, lights flashing and weirdly parked blocking the street. My husband answers the door and the officer explains to him that they got a complaint that there was a burglary in progress. My older son provided them with her vehicle description and license plate he was smart enough to note, sensing she would be trouble. The officers explained they've gotten several neighborhood watch calls about her. Apparently she drives around our neighborhood trying to hire handymen, lawn workers for cheap. Kind of reminds me of Dwight Schrute and looking for un bueno worker. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.